Thank you all for being here, and thank you for all those of you who are watching it via the video stream. Uh, I wanted to thank you all at the outset for all that you have done over the last year. We are going to the end of the semester, and I know you've had a very busy year, academic year, complicated with the maths and so on, and so thank you for all that you have done. Very deeply grateful for all that you have done and all that you continue to do for Illinois Tech. And at the outset, I want to thank Peter Kilpatrick, who's here. As you know, Peter has taken a new position as the president of the Catholic University of America. Thanks, Peter, for all that you have done for Illinois Tech, and you have left it as a much stronger academic enterprise. So thank you, and wish you all the very best. I wanted to start off, this town hall by talking a little bit about our broader business model, and then I'll quickly get to the topic at hand, which is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. To me, one of the most amazing things and the prime reason why I'm here is our ability to fulfill that founding mission, which was to harness the collective power of difference to advance technology for all. For 131 years, we have lived up to that promise. We are number one in terms of moving people up the economic mobility ladder in Illinois. And we are about one-third of our students are Pell-eligible students. And that's incredible when you think about what we have been able to do. And that is fundamentally made possible because of your efforts and the support of our philanthropic community. Because as you know, when you are a tuition-dependent school, vagaries in the early environment, etc., can cause a lot of volatility. And our philanthropic community has stood by us and has enabled us to fulfill our mission. But this is not to say that you have not had your challenges. And up front, I want to acknowledge the challenges that you have faced. Given the challenges in enrollment, especially during COVID, given the challenges in international students coming here because of governmental policies and COVID, we have been deeply affected. And you are the ones who have borne the brunt of it, But I'm here to say that I'm very optimistic for the future. We have obviously, with your help, laid out a lot of plans in the last 8 months. We have a new enrollment strategy. We are trying to diversify revenues. We are also trying to think through about what it means to have bets, excellent bets in focused areas. And so you're going to hear about some of these things shortly. But none of this will work if the culture of a place is not okay. And or is not, I would say, primed to its potential. And that's basically what this town hall is about for me today. While we were born different, and differences is in our ethos, we care deeply about diversity, educating students from all walks of life, bringing in talent, faculty and staff talent who are diverse to strengthen the fabric, etc. We still have miles to go as far as achieving the true potential of who we are is concerned. And for me, as I think through to the future, there are two important attributes that I must exhibit. One is being transparent with you all. And the second is every one of us needs to be intentional about what the future is and how we are going to incorporate diversity into all that we do so that we are a stronger workplace. The pragmatic case for diversity is very clear. Study after study after study shows that diverse workplaces fare better. But to me, uh, given that we at Illinois Tech want to exemplify the best values for a just world, I think it behooves us to, to utilize diversity as a moral factor, okay, beyond the pragmatics and so on. And that means we need to be intentional about our future. And today, at the end of, in the spirit of transparency, we are going to have Helen Azenwa, who's the Presidential Fellow on Diversity. And in case you didn't know Helen, can you wave to the audience? Okay, thank you. Just trying to lighten the mood here. Okay. And this is Elisa Bunton, our community fellow, and who probably has 28 hours in a day, given the kind of work that she does, etc. But thank you. The applause is very warranted. So what they are going to do is, last year, we commissioned a series of studies: student survey, faculty survey, staff survey. Beyond that, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council also had other surveys that they did, focus groups, I should say. Over the last 3 or 4 months, we have been unpacking a lot of this data, a lot of this information. I've had the VPs and the deans engage in strategic alignment with our consultant over the last month or so that we are all on the same page. The deans are very excited to go forward and to incorporate a truly diverse, inclusive workplace that also helps people belong. So they are going to present the results, and they are also going to talk a little bit about the roadmap that has been suggested to us. And then I'll talk about the next steps. So that's the plan. One of the things, before I hand it off to Helen, I wanted to highlight is the fact that we have these 2 presidential fellows, obviously because of their capabilities, but it's also my signal to the community that these topics matter. And Helen and Alicia have done a remarkable work already in the past few months. So one of the pieces of, one suggestion that I would give you is to utilize their services as you are starting to think about diversity in your own unit and so on. They'll be extraordinarily helpful. And there was a point that Wesley Ashton made to me, I think it was yesterday, where she said, unless otherwise you shape culture at the individual unit level, great things are not going to happen, or they are not going to sustain, etc. So Helen and Alicia are our first steps in marking that shaping the culture, if you will. So without further ado, I know you came here to hear Helen and Alicia speak, so I'll hand it off to Helen. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Raj. And if we could advance to the next couple slides, please. Couple more. All right, so the next slide we're going to talk about, if we could advance to the next slide, we're going to talk about methodology. So many of you did not get a chance to participate in the first session. So we wanted to just highlight during this session some high-level points that we took from the methodology for the student survey as well as the faculty and staff survey. And then, of course, Elisa will talk a little bit about where we are going from here. So, yes, if we can go back to the student survey, please. Thank you. So, with regards to the student survey, apologies for this, with regards to the student survey, we had about 500 students that participated in the survey. These students spent their time in giving us some feedback with regards to where they see us moving forward. The topics were really focused on engagement as well as DEI and culture. Of course, the survey was qualitative and quantitative, and it was administered by the Center for Research at IIT. Next slide. Based on the results that we received, we also got a bit of feedback from Nova Collective to help us moving forward. So the students' experiences varied between the colleges and between the units. However, they all felt that that DEI stood at the top with regards to initiatives moving forward. So Nova encourages us to continue this work around DEI, specifically with regards to our students. Only half of the students feel that their voices, any voice that is contrary to the status quo, will be received. And that number even drops significantly when we look at our Black LGBTQ+, as well as our students with disabilities. This is encouraging us to conduct a number of focus groups with regards to students and to be able to provide you with some feedback on those focus groups moving forward. The students also highlighted a lack of institutional support as well as accountability when we're talking about bias and the experiences that they've had. Only 66% of that 500 had indicated that there was equal opportunity to succeed at Illinois Tech. So addressing bias and discrimination is definitely a key to what we are going to be moving forward, what we are going to be doing moving forward. Next slide. In addition to student feedback, we also received feedback from our faculty and from our staff. Again, close to 700 responses from our staffs and faculty, a bit higher than from our students, but the topics were the same: engagement, DEI, as well as culture at the university. It was, the survey was qualitative and quantitative in nature as well. Next slide. With regards to the executive summary, on the faculty and staff results, the number one factor influencing employees was what was happening in their functional units or in their colleges. And trust in unit level was higher than trust at the university level. So engaging unit level leaders at Illinois Tech's DEI journey is key. I think this is already happening with a number of units as well as colleges, as that we do have DEI organizations within those units, as well as the university DEI committee. So we're looking to engage individuals and move forward with those plans. Promotions and workloads were perceived to be unfair, both at the faculty and staff level. So again, Lisa is going to talk a little bit further about that, steps that have been taken in that case. And one thing that we found within the university DEI, university committee, as well as other committees that exist within the units, is that there is one thread that's running throughout. And everyone is looking for transparency, putting some of these words into action. Raj is going to lead us through that discussion a little bit later. Employees are looking for real critical change. That has also transpired at the leadership level. A number of deans and faculty are also experiencing that. So many employees fear negative consequences. This is something that's similar to what we found for our students when they voice any opinions that are contrary. And over a third of the employees have experienced bias and discrimination. So it's a real thing, something that we need to clearly look a little bit closer at. DEI work at Illinois Tech should prioritize employee safety. And again, Raj will help us talk a little bit more later about what that will look like. So that being said, I'm going to transition to Elisa to talk a little bit about what Nova has done since the last time we were together.
Thank you, Helen. A series of executive level one-on-one interviews were conducted in January. The participants in the one-on-one interviews ranged from executive level leaders that are just below the President's Council and faculty leadership as well. These are individuals, some who serve on the faculty council and some do not, but are active in other committees. So these were truly a group of individuals that are highly visible at the university, and if you will, sort of have their finger on the pulse of what is going on. Again, there were 15 people who were selected, and the slide that you see actually tells the story. I'm not going to read every bullet point, but I will pull out a few key things. So with the strengths, everyone agrees that having a new president with a fresh perspective and a commitment to community, both the internal community and the external community, is for sure a feather in our cap. And we are indeed grateful to have President Raj. The faculty members and executive leaders also expressed a sense of pride in working at the university. Almost like the little engine that could. We are the university that does not get a lot of shine. However, there are deeply committed people here who do all that they can to make sure that the student experience is outstanding and that they're also having excellent relationships with their peers. Now, we cannot have a strength without a few gaps. The gaps include trust in leadership, diversity and representation, and supports for hiring and promotion. So trust in leadership basically means we need transparency. That was the essence of the feedback. Oftentimes, things are presented when they are 3/4 of the way done or at the very end, rather than sharing with everyone what the process was from the beginning and how one could engage in the process, as well as communicating what are the steps. So if we're starting at A, we'll know we've reached, success once we've gotten to D, and then ultimate success once we've gotten to pick a letter, whatever letter that you will. Diversity and representation was also called out as an issue, and this is a direct quote. Diversity and representation at Illinois Tech is largely defined as international foreign-born faculty. Leadership and faculty do not reflect the U.S. population. Supports for hiring and promotion, that kind of goes without any further explanation, but I will do a deeper dive in the next few slides. We have opportunities, particularly when it comes to training and development. All of the participants mentioned a lack or a gap of an executive training program. Many of the participants stated that whatever type of continuing education they received, it was definitely sought out by themselves. And for some, they also incurred the cost of that. We are looking for culture and purpose to be fully embedded throughout the university and the institution. It should not live within a particular department or a particular committee, because without full integration, it's just, small efforts that will not yield maximum results. The other area is with culture and purpose is an opportunity. So this is a direct quote. "The culture has a long way to go. Our senior leadership and senior faculty are misogynistic." Another individual said, "It's not about inviting me, it's about listening to me, like for real listening to me, active listening." And this individual went on to state that they did not feel comfortable in faculty meetings because they do not value my experience. I'll move on a bit to the threats. Bias and discrimination, budget constraints, silos, and hierarchies. I don't think any of these concepts are unfamiliar to us. We know about budget woes. We understand that silos exist. Great things may be going on in a particular college, but the other colleges are not aware. that great things may be going on in a particular unit or division on the administrative side, but because of the silos, we don't know. And that damages us because we cannot benefit from shared best practices if nothing is shared. As Helen mentioned, Nova Collective wanted to examine a large number of inputs to get a better understanding of what life is like at our university for students, faculty, and staff. Moving on from the executive level interviews, they conducted a policy and process audit. It's one thing to articulate the experience. It's another thing to actually review the documents that everybody who's onboarding or who is a current employee reviews on a daily or somewhat frequent basis to get answers to questions. So on the screen, you'll see the particular documents that they looked at: faculty handbook, 3 different job postings, our policies and procedures handbook, the recruiting guide for hiring managers, and the strategic plan. Next slide. So guess what? They had some recommendations. And those recommendations fall into 6 different buckets and observations, I'll add. So first and foremost, they want us to look at how we structure things and make sure that it's visually accessible and remove all unnecessary gendered language. They like the fact that our documents say that there are accountability mechanisms, but we do not go far enough in actually stating what the mechanisms are, how to move those levers, and how to, seek redress. They did note the in-group and out-group dynamic with tenure, and we've heard a lot about that with our untenured faculty members, and they highly recommend some type of resolution around that. They also called out our unpaid internships and how they punctuate disadvantages for those who cannot afford to volunteer their time. They caution us to beware of our unconscious biases and how they appear in language. So for example, they say including vague, open-ended language leaves room for bias and individual interpretation. And one of those documents, and I'm going to paraphrase, but the essence is the same. It says, do not discuss anything that could be, controversial with an applicant. That's pretty vague. They are guarding or warning us to move away from that. Their recommendation is also that we fully align our policies and practices with DEI values. They should not be standalones. They should be fully integrated. In addition to the EEOC statements, consider creating additional statements that communicate our commitment to DEI. And I will go to the next. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Another input from Nova Collective was a full day, I might add, called an executive alignment session. The participants of the executive alignment session were the provost and his direct reports, as well as the president and his direct reports, in addition to Helen and myself as fellows. On the left, you see calls to action. On the right, you see the concerns. So there's definitely a thread that is being repeated through our student surveys, our faculty and staff, through the executive level one-on-one, and now with the executive alignment sessions. So there's definitely implicit bias and historical cultural issues that stand between our faculty and staff, and in particular with our faculty, with the tenured versus the non-tenured. Everyone is feeling the silos that exist between the colleges, and at this level, the resource hoarding was called out. and also a lack of communication regarding opportunities. This group also noted that candidates are sometimes unfairly judged because the university is unable to see the immediate evidence of success, and they just don't see the true potential in a particular candidate. So the calls for change. Everyone would like to see, well, I shouldn't say everyone, a great number of people would like to see a change in the relationship between tenured faculty and staff. We need to share the entire menu of events that occur for the university, not just a specific school. There's a call for increased diversity in hiring practices and a change in policies and process. Nova Collective suggested that there is a role for everyone to play at the various levels, and I'm going to use their language. We may be upstanders. An upstander is the opposite of a bystander. When you see wrongdoing, you act on it, you combat it, you interrupt bias and inequities. You may be a scholar. Learn about the challenges faced by colleagues and other marginalized groups. Moving on, you can be an advocate and use your power and influence to bring peers from underrepresented groups into exclusive circles, recognize and address unjust omissions, and hold peers accountable. And even above that, hold yourself accountable. You can be an amplifier, ensuring that marginalized voices are heard and respected. This can take many forms, but it's focused on representation within communication. You can be a champion. You can willingly defer to colleagues from underrepresented groups in meetings and industry-wide events, sending meaningful messages to large audience. And lastly, you can choose to be a sponsor. You can vocally support the work of colleagues from underrepresented groups in all contexts, but specifically when it helps boost those colleagues' standing and reputation. All about we and not all about me is the best way of summarizing that. I want to move to GREAT, their roadmap. They used all of these inputs to give us our marching orders, which appear in 7 different buckets. I won't read them. They are definitely on the screen. The University Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee met, and as a group, we evaluated all of these, and we made some recommendations on top of NOVA's recommendations. It is our belief that the first 4 buckets that you see are the ones that the university needs to focus on first. I'm going to read a quote that was taken from the NOVA data. When it's always the same faculty, staff, and student leaders who end up taking most of the leadership responsibility for addressing diversity, inequity, inclusion, and challenges, it can lead to burnout and then fewer resources for future students or for the institution as a whole. There needs to be more recognition of the unpaid labor and additional stresses these roles involve, and provide additional money, recognition, and other support to keep the work going productively. That statement ties in perfectly with item number 1, operationalizing DEI. The recommendation is that DEI work be embedded within the strategic plan through annual trainings, prioritization of DEI within the colleges and the administrative functional units, policy reviews, hiring a VP of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a full staff, as well as building accountability and agency within the DEI committee itself. Bucket number 2 is a communication and training plan. And the quote that legitimizes this is as follows: IIT runs on dishonesty. The administration does not communicate honestly with the community, and everyone knows it. Lip service is only paid to DEI. With an adequate communication and training plan, we would be able to do a much better job of translating what is and what will be. Their communication plan training includes a plan that looks at tone and voice, key messages, identification of all of our communication channels, and an audit of communication sources, rolling out a particular cadence and frequency for sharing what we're doing and how folks can get involved, and communicating key performance indicators. Bucket number 3 is a pay equity audit. And this is, again, nothing new. In our previous administration, there were calls for a pay equity audit, and they still remain. Nova Collective recommends this audit and says that it will illuminate pay disparities and serve as a starting point for establishing equitable pay. We need to look at whether pay is equitable along the lines of race, ethnicity, and gender. And while looking at those bands, making sure that women and people of color fall in the middle or upper end of the band, not the lower end of the band when compared with their Caucasian counterparts. Nova Collective suggests exploring the dynamic between the factors of gender, ethnicity, position, and salary. And of course, they recommend having a plan to make actionable change if the data suggests that it is warranted. The last bucket is number 4, the hiring toolkit and training. And again, here is a statement from one of us. Senior leadership has consistently demonstrated in hiring policies, promotion, and professional development as an obvious bias towards white males and to a lesser but prevalent extent to white females. Their hiring toolkit and training contains benchmarking and focus areas, what to do when you're preparing to hire, sourcing talent, interviews and advancement, gathering feedback, accountability, managing attrition, and implementing new practices and protocols. The training also consists of guiding us through the toolkit and live Q&A. So this is the full range of engagement that we had with Nova Collective. This is what they have found from speaking with our faculty, staff, and students, and these are their recommendations and ours on top of that. So this is where I have the distinct privilege and pleasure to turn it on over to our president to talk about what we're going to do as a result of all of this data, moving from talk to action. So let's give a round of applause to Raj in advance for what he's going to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen and Elisa. First and foremost, I acknowledge the need for more communication. You know, obviously, this is a first step in being totally transparent, because a lot of these things I realize are because we are not communicating enough, you know, and the buck stops with me. And so I'll get to it, and I don't want you to think of it as, you know, excuses, etc. But there are lots of things that we do because we always want to do the right thing. I can tell you right now, one of the things that amazes me when I look at the rank and file of our faculty and staff is how people always want to do the right thing. I just had a meeting with a candidate who wants to come here, and I said, what is the one thing that surprised you? And the answer that this person gave was the passion exhibited by all our faculty and staff down the line, and they understand purpose and so on. A lot of times from our vantage point, from my vantage point, I think we do the right thing, but a lot of times we don't communicate it in the right way, and it leads to certain distortions and so on. So from my part, I'm going to communicate more. And so if you get 3 emails from me every week, don't think, oh my God, he's over-communicating. Think of it as that was supposed to be a joke. Okay. Also wanted to let you know today, so anyway, Jess, we need to have an audience that with a laugh track. Anyway, but the broader point that you've all expressed here is fairly valid, and this is actually a sign of passion and engagement. So I think of this as positive. So upfront, I will tell you, we'll host a suggestion box on our website, anonymous suggestion box, so we don't know where it is coming from. And if you are worried about your name, etc., being attached, please feel free. Every email that comes to my office is answered. Might be slight delay, but it is always answered. And that is usually because of my travel schedule, etc., and they can't communicate without my explicit approval and so on. So the first thing I want to say to you is we have already taken steps, and I want to thank Provost Kilpatrick, I want to thank the deans, I want to thank the UFC chair, Daniel Bliss, because I will make a commitment here. It is about one Illinois Tech. It is not about tenured faculty, tenure track faculty, staff, etc. It is fundamentally all of us do different kinds of jobs, and all of us care for one thing, which is the strength of our institutions through educating our students in an impactful manner. That's basically what all of us do. So this stratification between levels of faculty and staff, etc., shouldn't exist. And we have already taken some steps in the last 2 or 3 months, if you have been following the UFC faculty policy and so on, in this direction. Again, by no means we are perfect. But we will continue to improve. But the broader point of including everybody and saying we are one Illinois Tech is fundamentally we account for the lived-in experiences of everyone, and therefore we can move forward. As I looked at the various things that Helen and Alicia put together, I think of it in 3 different buckets. I think of it in terms of the people bucket, the process bucket, and the culture bucket. And I will say to you, underlying all this is psychological safety, and the psychological safety of how you feel. And again, I'm deeply committed to improving the psychological safety. And I will say one thing. My father always used to say, whenever I used to say to him, that idea is gross. But I said it in Tamil, which made it slightly less vile than what I'm saying right now. Again, joke. My God, thank you, April. But my father always used to say back to me a quote from Voltaire, which is, I disagree with you, but I will defend unto my death your right to say so. And that's exactly what I believe in. So none of your ideas, none of your comments will hurt me. None of these comments, which is fundamentally made to improve our institution, will be taken against you. I promise you that. Okay, so from a culture point of view, it is about psychological safety. And as I was thinking about it, and I've talked to a variety of people about these recommendations, I realized that we don't have university values. And I'm not talking about DEI values. I'm talking about university values. What is it we believe in? When you think about it, we talk about differences, etc., but at underlying that should be a set of core values. Because when we all, and these core values cannot come from the president's office or the provost's office or from your deans, it has to come from individual units. So And then we can actually assemble a set of core values. Because when you start living your values, your professional values, or the institutional values, then you can actually, it leads to virtuosity, which means you can live your broader purpose, if you will. So the upshot of this is I'm deeply committed uh, to creating a DEI action plan with next steps, but underlying the DEI action plan will be a set of core values that we believe in. And it actually reminded me, 2 weeks ago, I was in Austin, Texas. I was with Roy Spence, who some of you may know, and Ernie was there in the call with me, was there in the meeting with me. And Roy Spence said, you belong to a very, very important institution because you are a campus with a calling. And one thing that he said at that point in time was he took us out of the room and he took us to the foyer and he showed the values. And he said, here are the 6 values that we live by. He's the guy who did Southwest Airlines Freedom to Fly, BMW, the Experience Machine, and Don't Mess with Texas, and so on. So very powerful guy. So again, from a timeline point of view, I know that we are all overworked, but I'm committed to doing this this summer to create a DEI action plan with next steps and the values, if you will. It will be a university-wide culture plan. And associated with that is going to be a website with a dashboard and the metrics that you can all follow along, and you can comment on it, and you can see the progress. And that is part of my vision for communication with you, so that you can see, you can track it, you can see where we fall short, and it is going to be fundamentally transparent. I also, given the fact a lot of times when we talk about these things, and there was a very interesting recommendation made in one of the previous slides. As you know, there is a strategic envisioning committee that is working on updating our strategic plan. Our goal is to socialize with faculty and staff over the next few months so that we'll bring it into a broader strategic plan. And my hope is to embed this DEI plan with a strategic plan so that these are not 2 separate siloed plans, but a cohesive plan. And again, you will be involved. We'll go from there. The second thing I want to talk about is the process part of the equation, because a lot of what you said here is about process. And when I think about process, I think in terms of a matrix. You have the various audiences. You have the students, faculty, staff, advisory board members, community members who exhibit our diversity values and so on. So that is one part of the axis, if you will. The other part that intersects horizontally, to me, happens to be selection. Once you select and people come in, how do you train and develop them and retain them? So that's basically the matrix that we are thinking about. And again, I've talked to a variety of faculty leaders. A lot of times, what you perceive sometimes as we are myopic and we don't involve a diverse search committee, et cetera. A lot of times we are hamstrung by the bylaws and the handbooks and so we are deeply committed to changing the handbook, which is what the provost has agreed to do in consultation with the faculty, et cetera, especially when it comes to a diverse committee that can actually look at the multidimensionality of a candidate and therefore harness a direct diverse pool. We are committed to doing that. From a student point of view, again, there is, from the recruiting student point of view, we are deeply committed, and we are, you know about our Chicago Difference program, where we are committed to scholarships for first generation and low-income students from the Chicago public school system. In the steady state, in 4 or 5 years, we expect to fund about 800 scholarships or so. That is a significant commitment. It is not just academic scholarship, it is also housing scholarships, because as we listen to the community, we realize first generation and lower income students don't want to stay here because they can save money. If they don't stay here, they don't get the full college experience. And therefore, we are committed, obviously, to the housing scholarship, the wraparound support, in order to make them, students, holistic students who are impactful, and the same thing with the staff. How do you recruit the right kind of staff member who is deeply committed to us? But more importantly, one of the things that I've asked our HR to do is to start thinking about succession planning in each unit, probably, and it may not be at a unit level, maybe at a university level. Can we start thinking about succession planning so that people have pathways to go ahead in their lives, etc. But once you bring in people in, diverse people in, which is what diversity is all about, then it fundamentally becomes about inclusion and belonging. And so for that, I'm again committed to university-wide diversity training. And beyond that, we are also examining options of providing certain learning packages to you so that you can learn on your own and you can improve yourself, be it from a professional perspective or even from a personal perspective, etc. This, to me, is all following the arc of how to improve and develop our people beyond the diversity topic, if you will. And last but not the least is fundamentally about retention. So I'm deeply committed to changing the processes. If these processes arise out of archaic handbooks, deeply committed to that. But there was one point that was made about pay audit. Again, I'm going to give you a nuanced answer. Whenever we do anything, when the provost approves the faculty salaries, when raises and so on, and when we do it, we absolutely compare it with the Coupa data, colleges and universities pay survey, etc. Because we can't, beyond the morality of it, there is a legal aspect of it, okay? So that is absolutely true that we do the pay audits for both faculty and staff, and we ensure that people are taken care of. But the larger point that I think Alicia made here is when you have lower numbers of people, let's say from certain racial and ethnic minorities, then these comparisons can become slightly problematic and complex. So that can only be taken care of when you start bringing in people, when you start having a truly diverse workforce, which I'm committed to. And the last thing I will say, because I know some of you have questions that you've already asked, and you're more than welcome to ask other questions as well, is with respect to people. And I'm again committed to appointing an ombudsperson who can actually resolve the faculty and staff issues and concerns with an element of neutrality. So for a long time now, and one thing I will say to you, and I have to commend, I see Walter there sitting in the corner, our counsel's office. Whenever there is a formal complaint, I promise you, we do take care of it, we do address it, we do try to remedy it and resolve it. But sometimes you may not know the result because of certain privacy and legal concerns that we have. But I also realize beyond the job that Walter does, maybe we need to have an ombudsperson who is unconnected with me so that they can do the right kind of investigation, if you will, if it was warranted. And as far as one thing that we are all, there's a common question for me, which is, what is your status? What is the status on the VP for DEI? Upfront, I will tell you, there are two answers here for me. All of us are diversity officers, if you will, okay? But beyond that, I'm deeply committed to somebody who reports to me directly as VP of DEI. But at this point in time, till we have an action plan with the next steps, and given uh, how the situation is unfolding, I'm optimistic for the fall, but I have to be a responsible steward for the university as well. So what I am waiting for is to see what are the tangible things we need to do. Can we define a good job description for this VP DEI? And can we provide the right resources? It is one thing for me to hire a VP DEI immediately and say, okay, you are going to do this. But if I don't staff this office correctly, or if I don't provide the office with the right kind of resources, the best laid plans are going to go awry. So that's what I'm kind of waiting for, to see something concrete. But having said that, I will tell you, and I will end with this. I speak for the senior leadership, I speak for the deans. When I say we are all deeply, deeply committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as importantly, I've spoken to all of them. I know I speak for them when I say this. We promise to be very intentional about diversity and belonging in the future, and we are going to take the right steps in order to accomplish that goal. But as we embark on this, I ask for two things from you. Patience. Okay, Rome was not built in a day, right? And so if you have any concerns, questions, shoot an email, or go through the suggestion box, and we'll be more than happy to answer. We will communicate so that you know exactly where we are, And the second thing is, I need you also to work with us, each and every one of you. Because at the end of the day, I can sit here and talk about a culture of psychological safety, but at the end of the day, culture is about you also. When a student comes to your office and talks to you, for that student, the Illinois Tech culture is reflected by you. So you are our evangelists. You are our promise keepers. You have done enormously well for us. So my thing is, you are empowered to act on this diversity, equity, and inclusion mission. And if you feel that something is not going all right, speak up, talk to us, talk to whoever it is, because collectively, I want to assure you that this empowerment and holding us accountable will help us move in the long run to build towards a more perfect university. And that is my aspiration for Illinois Tech. Again, thank you all, and I'm going to ask Alicia and Helen if there are questions. And go ahead, Helen.
Okay, so we did receive some questions ahead of time, but if there are any questions in the room, if anyone would like to come up, we have mics here as well. So is anyone feeling brave right now? Okay, I'm going to start with these questions and I'll come back to you. Okay. First question for Raj and Peter and their teams. What are the plans for the university to include individuals with various disabilities, for example, physical, deaf, hard of hearing, visual impaired, into our faculty and staff roles?
To me, when I talk about diversity, it is a broad spectrum, if you will, and absolutely differently abled are a very important part of it. And one of the things that was made aware, somebody made this comment to me about a week ago, is start talking about, I've not spoken to Jess about this, who's our VP for Marketing and Communications, but to start thinking about whether our websites are accessible for people with visual disability and so on, and start thinking about our website differently to accommodate various audiences and so on. But at the end of the day, I'm deeply committed to the differently able, the neurodivergent, etc. But I will tell you, given the fact that I don't deal with it at the weeds, if you have any important suggestions and thoughts on how we can do it, please let us know. I don't profess to know all the answers, and it is up to you to tell me if there are limitations in certain things. More than happy to accommodate, because accommodating the differently abled in both faculty and staff roles, and of course recruiting students who are differently abled, is only going to make our university stronger. So absolutely, please keep your suggestions coming on this.
Okay, thank you, Raj. What is leadership doing to ensure the resources allocated to DEI work is actually being utilized and having some type of return on investment? Are there examples of what leadership is doing to create a culture of DEI that the rest of Illinois tech community can emulate?
One of the things, there are two parts to this question. One is responsible stewardship of finances. And the second is about generalizing best practices from one unit to the other and so on. And I'm going to leave the second part, to Alicia and Helen as the co-chairs of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to tell me, and I'm more than happy to utilize our marketing resources to communicate, et cetera. The first thing I will say is the term used was return on investment. To me, when it comes to DEI, I don't think I look at it that way. It is not about return on investment for me. It is about a moral investment that we need to make. And it'll pay off in a variety of ways. It'll pay off in love. It'll pay off with pride. It'll pay off in a variety of ways. So I don't look at it and go to a CFO, an interim CFO. We are going to have, by the way, we are going to announce a CFO hopefully in the next week or so. You're going to be extraordinarily excited about this new hire. But I don't go to our CFO and say, what is the return on investment on this? Because that to me is not how I think about it. But having said that, every dollar we spend, and I'm not just talking about DEI, we are very responsible about how we spend, and we are, I would say to you, compared to my prior experiences in various universities, we are highly, highly efficient as a university. We are a lean, mean fighting machine. So thank you, April. You're the only one. But, but I look forward to good ideas coming from you on what ideas can actually be transplanted to other colleges and other units, and happy to explore those.
Okay, I'm going to pause again in case there are questions from the room.
Are there any questions, comments? April? Okay.
Thank you, April.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much. You have, just by your presence, changed the culture in this space. Your leadership has guided us in a way that hasn't happened in the 15 years that I've been working here. So thank you very much for putting your money where your mouth is, putting your resources where they need to be, changing the way hiring happens. Before you were here, there were, the way we are now is a function of not having the policies in place that make for fairness. And you've changed that in just the few months that we're here. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. And I'm really appreciative of all of our faculty. We do have, from my perspective, I'm cringing when I hear this, because I've always had a fantastic experience with our faculty and our VPs and everyone else. Like, we're doing the Darshwasan lecture on the 28th, and every college I called said, yes, how can I help? Who do you need? What can I do? And I think we have a will do, can do attitude, and your presence has given us license to come up with ideas, give them to you, and run with them. So thank you very much.
April, much appreciated. I'm deeply humbled. I also, I want to acknowledge the kind of work you and the enrollment team you have done in the last year. It is incredible. And The one thing, yes, the one thing that I think we need to get out of, because we are a university based in the Midwest, is we are humble. And I think it is time we start humble bragging. Because some of the things we are doing is just, first of its kind. The virtual internships that April is leading. I'm going to ask Alicia to talk a little bit about the community garden and the things that Alicia has done over the last few years with respect to the community initiatives, et cetera, wherein she has actually embedded a DEI perspective to it. So Alicia, if you don't mind.
They mic tested me with this one, so. All right. So we have a partnership with the Chicago Botanic Garden, and it is a project, a citizen science project entitled Bud Burst. It is going to be a beautiful, beautiful garden at the corner of 33rd and Michigan, about halfway down the block, just before you reach the U Farm. But nevertheless, the garden will provide green space for community programming, whether that is holding groups, support groups for individuals that need that type of support. It's also a place where Girl Scout and Boy Scout, and I may be dating myself because they may have removed those labels, but it's a place where scouts will be able to go and work on their ecology badges. In a nutshell, folks will be invited to download an app on their phone and visit the garden and indicate the number of pollinators that they see going by, and there are pictures of the pollinators in particular that the government is interested in identifying, and the number of new buds. This is also a partnership with 4 different elementary schools here in Bronzeville. So there are students and science teachers from Drake Elementary, from Pershing Magnet School, from Bronzeville Classical, and from Doolittle, who are all going to make our little plot of land their plot of land and conduct classes and learn in ways that, heretofore had not been available to them. Just this past weekend, we had a STEM expo, and I'll share this really quickly. One of the exhibitors was Omni Ecosystems, and they create soil. And their soil is super lightweight, which enables rooftop gardens hither and yon. Nevertheless, the little boy was in the class. He was learning about soil science. He was learning about why rooftop gardens are important. But here's the fun part. He was given a periodic table, and he was introduced to this periodic table. He had to identify the particular elements that are used in this soil mix. And he said out loud, "This is the best day of my life." And I thought, I clearly did not have the same experience when I was introduced to the periodic table, because it was not, and it still is not, the best day of my life. But it's these type of partnerships with businesses that are in the community, because Omni Ecosystems is literally down the street. And if you've gone to 40th and State, you've passed it, just like I have, and didn't even know what you were looking at. But it's partnering with community to share with community within the context of this space, normalizing the collegiate experience. It is my sincere hope and goal that by exposing kids to science and helping them understand that it is fun and it is for them and not some other group of people, however you define other, that they will catch hold and they will want to come to our summer programs. They will want to engage in the pre-collegiate programming, and eventually they will graduate from this institution, and we will no longer be the best kept secret on the south side of Chicago. We will have fully walked into our mission. Someone mentioned, what are we doing about those who have hearing impairments or other disabilities? Every Zoom program that is produced by the Office of Community Affairs has ASL translation services. And this was a need that was brought to my attention about 7 or 8 months ago, and ever since it was brought to me, we have been implementing it. So share your concerns, share your requests and your needs, and I promise you that they will be heard and addressed.
Thank you. And there are other exciting initiatives coming from the Office of Community Affairs, so stay tuned. But these will exhibit for you not only our deep commitment to Bronzeville, but also our deep engagement with Bronzeville. And thanks to Alicia and our wonderful team for making all this work.
Well, Raj, we're at time. If you want to close us out, we can continue our discussion in the reception.
Okay, we apparently have a reception, so I invite you all for this reception. And I want to close again by thanking Helen and Alicia, who are truly, truly, truly unsung heroes, if you will, who have done some remarkable work in the last 4 months without any fanfare, without any accolades and visibility, etc. So this is my opportunity to thank them in front of our entire university community for what they have done and what they will continue to do. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Alisa. And to all of you, thank you for all that you do, and more importantly, thank you for holding us accountable. Only when you do that can we truly emerge as a stronger university that fulfills our very noble purpose. So thank you all. I look forward to seeing you in the reception. And for those of you video streaming, we are going to eat and drink on your behalf. So thank you.